what's something that we've learned, and in hindsight, what would we have maybe done differently, or what can we share with folks who might be ascending this ladder? So Melanie, I wondered if you could share something with us that you're comfortable to share.
Yeah, aside from the one I just said about realizing that I hadn't actually led one of my team very well. This one's probably, this isn't just an oh shit moment, it's quite big, I guess, for me, but it's something I've come to realize a lot over the last year, just how big it's been. And it's taken me probably a year to actually admit or name it properly. But last year, as an example, I was out. I do a lot of running, as at least one other person on this call is a big fan of. So I do a lot of long distance running. I was doing a long distance run. I started to fall over a lot. Couldn't work out why. Got pulled off the race. Thought I had an ear infection. Went to the doctor, ran lots of tests. Came back clear. A couple of months later, went back again. Lots of tests. Hair's falling out. Can't sleep very well. Starting to feel quite sick. Think I must be unwell. A couple months later, same thing again. And eventually someone said, "You stressed?" I said, "Well, yeah, life's a bit stressful. It's probably that. Lots of non-work related stress going on." But actually, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had completely, well and truly burnt myself out into a big hole. And I am now, a year later, still climbing out of that hole. My hair stopped falling out. I've got a bit more energy, but I've been incredibly unwell, and hadn't recognized how sick I'd got. Now, the reason why I say that is because what I think I was doing was pushing myself way too hard. I wasn't stopping and saying, actually, I need some help. I'd stepped into a role. I was replaced when I left a company by 2 people. So there was enough work there for 2 heads of product to take over from me. And to be fair to the company, that was a couple of times people said, "You sure you can do this?" And I kept saying, "Yeah, I can do it. I can do it. I can do all this stuff." And I just wasn't stopping. And I think I don't know if it's just coincidental, but the other heads of product at this company were all male. None of them were in quite the state I was in. Some people were burnt out, but not to the level I was burnt out. And I decided I needed to set up the way we were working, have all the documentation ready, have everything be really exciting. And I'd have the strategy. And I was working till 1, 2, 3 in the morning, night after night. And I guess it's a really cliched kind of burnout for a woman to say, but I had for women to say, but I had just pushed myself so hard thinking I needed to be the best I could possibly be, and made myself incredibly ill. So I think my learning would, aside from the obvious thing of you're getting medical tests and they're coming back negative, maybe there's something else going on, is just to kind of stop. And I do this a lot more now. I've had a lot of therapy in the last year, but sense checking myself and going, hold on, why is this important? Why are you getting stressed about this? And trying to find little techniques. The other day I was out for a run, had an obtrusive thought. I stopped, took a screenshot of something, thought went away, carried on running. Instead of running for a few hours, just with this thought in my head. So just trying to recognize when I'm going down that path and find ways to stop myself doing it. So really, I wish that I'd recognized a couple of years ago just how far I was going, and stopped myself doing it. So yeah, like I said, not quite such a one moment, more of a build up of several years worth of work. But yeah, I think I see that. And actually, now I've said that, I do see that as a failure. It's probably quite a harsh word to use, but I do think it's a failing to have not recognized it myself.
Can I add? Oh, I was gonna say that this may not be failure, but adding to Melanie's story, I have a very similar, like a couple of months ago, I lost like my key partner suddenly on leave. I picked up her entire job, and I had this conversation like 2 months in, like really burning out, with my manager, saying, well, like I'm kind of craving recognition here that I'm doing 2 jobs at once. And his reaction surprised me at the time. And then I think it was super correct, it just maybe not the right words. He was saying like, why are you trying? He said, you're doing 120% and you're burning yourself out. And what difference does it make? And I thought it was really harsh at the time. Like, instead of, I was craving and saying, oh, great job, you're covering for this. And it was very harsh feedback. But then looking back at it, it's exactly what he was saying. Like, are you working too hard? And what diminishing returns, right? Like, what are you doing this for? And I think it goes back to that perfectionist, like, we can't let anything drop. Everything has to be done perfectly. And he was kind of encouraging me to fail, right? He said, just let all of these things drop. because you're burning yourself out and there's not that much benefit out of it. So I think recognizing that's really important.
Jackie, have you got anything you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, and it's interesting hearing Melanie and Clara say that. My failure is along the same theme, but mine is earlier in my career. Being in engineering and going into the room and being the woman and oftentimes the only person of color and the only Black person, I spent many years twisting myself in knots and trying to make, specifically most of the times, white men in the room feel comfortable. And so I would show up in the way that I thought would appease others and wouldn't show up being myself, coupled with all of the things of being that only person in the room, that unicorn per se. I had all of the perfectionism, all of the trying to be the best, all of the things you heard Clara and Melanie talk about, right? And then it made me very ill, and mental health wise, I was burnt out. I wasn't a great wife, I wasn't a great friend, I wasn't a great daughter. And it sent me into therapy, and I had to have an epiphany moment to realize that it wasn't worth my life. And that's when I had to have as we say here in the US, had to have and I live here in the South, in Atlanta, Georgia, I had to have a come to Jesus moment and realized, all the patriarchy and all of my female perfectionism wasn't worth it. And so that was a failing on my part in not understanding that my life and my family and my friends and my well-being wasn't worth it. And to keep like trolling and trying to prove a point against all these men or trying to show them that I was the best just wasn't worth it. Because if I left, they'd replace me with 3 people, or if I left, the company would still go on. And that's when, all those years ago, I made the decision that every day in my career, I would live my career for what was best for me. I would show up authentically. I'd show up in the way that was best for me. And I would only engage with companies and cultures that were going to be best for me, that would make me great. And in turn, I'd be great for the company. And so that was my failure. And once I had that epiphany, I've never looked back.
I think maybe you've recrafted our sort of failures topic to epiphanies. Such a nice word.
That was my biggest failure. And so for me, when it comes to failures in work, or to me, I don't have failures anymore. They're all learnings, right? To me, there aren't failures, right? Excuse my French. I'm not here to offend anyone. If I fuck up at work, I fuck up. Okay, I'm sorry. It's a learning for me. Nothing in life is so bad that is worth my health and affecting my family and my friends. Those are all learning moments for me, and I will live to see another day. The failure for me is affecting, my health, the people I love, and my future. The things we do every day to go to work and get a paycheck are not worth our friends and family not living to see us the next day. I will just say that.
Amazing, thank you. And how about you, Maia? Is there anything you want to share? You can stay on theme or take.
I mean, I relate to absolutely everything everyone else has said. Yeah, definitely the strive for perfectionism and kind of looking at failures and taking things too seriously. And I remember fairly early on in my career, I was stressing about something stupid. I don't even remember what it was. It was that tiny that I don't even remember what it was. I was really stressing out. And I remember I was talking to one of my colleagues. I'm like, oh, I think, I'm not quite sure this was exactly right. And what if I did it wrong? He just looked at me and like, Maia, we're not doctors, right? We work in technology. At the time, it wasn't technology, but it was still tech-related role. What's the worst that could happen, right? What's the worst that could happen with this email or this presentation or whatever I was working on? He's like, my brother is a doctor. For him, if he messes up something, it's a human's life, right? And I just looked at him like, wow, nobody has said that to me before. It was just such a wow moment at the time. It was so small, but to this day, I use that a lot. Even when I talk to, people I'm mentoring or coaching, or just generally, I kind of slip it into conversations, because sometimes people just take themselves too seriously about things that at the end of the day are actually not that big of a deal. And you shouldn't really stress yourself out or, sacrifice evenings with your family or going out and doing something for yourself for work. So I do slip it into conversations like I just did now. But I've had multiple failures / learning opportunities as I recrafted them neatly in my language, just to say, oh no, they're not failures. I've just learned from them. And I did recently kind of a leadership assessment for training, and there was a questionnaire there around, what's important to you in your career, and there were kind of various kind of questions, and then the findings were, it could be that you want to climb up the ladder, it could be that you want to just be very specialized. And for me, really what came out was that for me it's really important, the work-life balance. That's what's really important to me. So right now, this is kind of how I look at every opportunity that comes my way. Actually, is it worth it? Is it worth it me putting more effort at work? But will I get something out of it, right? As a person, will I enjoy it actually? Will I enjoy extra work? Or is it just I'm saying yes just because I'm asked? And that means actually I won't spend as much time enjoying my life outside of work, right? Because I do strongly believe that we should all be working in careers that we enjoy. But that's how I look at things nowadays, and it's been through multiple small and bigger failures in my life that I've come to this conclusion.